pronounce he, him. I'm a UI developer at CrowdStrike on the ETL team. I work with JavaScript and EmberJS all day long and HTML, CSS, all those supportive technologies. Lovely to see so many faces. Would be awesome to see you in person to get to know you a little bit, but unfortunately, this is not the world right now. So since we can't really meet in person and chit chat, I was thinking about doing a little bit of warm-up game to know each other. I mean, you know me. The game is called Where Did Michal Live According to the Alcohol Famous for That Region. Let's start with the beer, Pilsner type of beer, which has been invented, or better yet, first brewed in nowhere else than Pilsen, Czech Republic. After that, I moved to the land of Guinness, but with a twist. It was Ireland, but not the Ireland, the Northern Ireland. Know the difference? It's kind of important. Next, I moved to the land of whiskey, spelled without E. So that's going to be Scotland, Edinburgh. And recently I moved to the land that gave us the lovely green fairy of absinthe, which would be Switzerland, Interlaken. Did you get all 4 points? Okay, that's enough fun for today. Let's get back to the boring talk. Speaking about my talk, the title is The Case for Consistency in 2022 Plus Frontend Apps. Well, what is consistency anyways? Well, let's ask the internet, right? First, Cambridge Dictionary, the physical nature of a substance, especially a thick liquid, for example, by being thick or thin, smooth or lumpy, etc. Well, that's not really helpful for this case, right? Merriam-Webster, the quality or fact of staying the same at different times. I think that's better, but still quite far from being useful in our case. Back to Cambridge Dictionary, the quality of always behaving or performing in a similar way, or of always happening in a similar way. I kind of like that one. I will keep it. Okay, we defined what consistency is, but what we're actually trying to solve here. I will give you a hint in a form of a really bad dad joke. Anyone guess what do these represent? Like those are all bikes, right? Furry bikes, hairy bikes, bikes that can shed. Of course, we're going to talk about bike shedding. For those of you who don't know, bike shedding is an effect where people or organizations spend majority of their time on things that do not really matter. For example, what is going to be the color of the bike shed next to a power plant that itself still needs to be built, hence the name. And to give you an idea whether you want to listen to me or just zone out, here's a list of the things that I'm going to talk about and serves as a reference for your future self. Consistency. What is consistency in the scope of IT? I mean, we can't even settle down the ancient argument on tabs versus spaces, but to be fair, we would probably agree on something in that space. Or the holy war of the editors. We have VS Code, we have WebStorm, we have Vim, which are, by the way, all supported and actively used here at CrowdStrike, where I work. What's next on the list? Binary keyboards, butterfly wings, all those things are possible. The options how to get your source code on the hard drive are vast. But some would argue that consistency means removing a choice. Because if I agree to be consistent, then I can't really choose anymore, right? Well, I don't think that's the right way to look at it. The freedom to choose is still there. It has just been externalized to an RFC process, whichever might be used in given group or organization, so that the hard, monotonous, repetitive work can be done by machines. so that you, smart human being, can be doing something way more productive. Okay, that's nice and stuff, but what about some specific examples? Example number 1, editor config. It can tell your editor, hence the name, how to format your inputs. Emphasis being on the inputs, because the rules here can, in fact, be in contraction with some other tooling. But that's okay. And I will show you later on why that's okay. It can say, for example, that we're using spaces. Remember the previous comic? That we're using 2 spaces per indentation. And we can be even fancy and set the settings per file type, because different programming languages have different approaches to this. So that's fine. We still have the choice. How much standard is editor config? Well, quite standard if you ask me. Like, you will probably find your favorite editor here, and you can set it up, or it will be natively supported. And as an example that it's actually being used in the wild, Ember ships with one editor config for the contributors of the project itself, and other one for the bootstrapped projects from the Ember CLI. But then again, it's not all great and unicorns, and some projects just don't think that this is a necessity. They will get there. Example number 2. ESLint, or linters in general. You know, the tool that tells you that your 5 lines of code have 7 issues. Actually, we can try it right away, because this is the future. Let's say that foo equals bar as a string. That can possibly be wrong, right? Uh-oh, squiggly lines. That's not good. Now, how many violations can that possibly make? Do the guess in your head, or like type it into the chat. 23, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh wait, there's more below default. 7, 8. 8 violations on 1 line of code. Hey, nobody got time fixing that. I heard that excuse so many times. And frankly, I'm quite tired of it. Remember when we were talking about the machines doing the work while the humans are thinking? Well, nobody forces you to fix most of the lint violations by hand. You just set your editor or pre-commit hook or CI to do the fix for you, and you're done. So I don't think there's really an excuse to not use it. And again, since Ember community thinks this is a useful tool, it's using ESLint internally and in the blueprints. Example number 3, Prettier. Prettier is a code formatting tool, and to show you its power, I will give you an example of how it works in an unnecessarily complicated way. Let's take a source code of Prettier itself, right? It is a code. Run it through a minifier, you know, the thing that will just remove all the spaces and all the formatting, and then put it back to Prettier. And it's pretty readable. It's probably not the best code ever, but we got something that's usable, which is way better than the block of text on the right side. And don't tell me that this was a useless exercise, because I know that some of you, given the chance, would happily produce code like this and be proud about it. I can see you. I had you in my PRs. Sometimes people are confused what is the difference between Prettier and ESLint. This is the official stanza from Prettier developers. Prettier does not care about functional issues. It just wants to format your code. So approach it like that. Oh yeah, and regarding the fixes of Prettier violations, do I have to repeat myself here? Just set the tooling. You will have much easier days. Example number 4, ember-template-lint. This one is very EmberJS specific, but the takeaways can be used in other environments as well. EmberJS uses templates, which is a declarative way to build the DOM of your applications. Objectively, there are many advantages and disadvantages to this, but subjectively, I really like the readability. Like, you never had to see handlebars before, and you could get the gist of this code snippet. Compare it to non-template approaches, and the readability can go off the cliff very fast. When I ask in the community on some of the key points why templates, I got the following. Let's read that. The crux of templates is that having a well-defined domain-specific language, principle of least power, you can know much more about the system and implement great optimizations, which in turn, we've got completely changed the rendering engine for Ember with a very minimal impact. And to showcase that, one of the members of the community just tried to build a demo of what that means. And somewhere in the version 3.12, we got a massive rendering speed boost, thanks to conventions, to templates, and to everything that the community built, which is really cool. But back to ember-template-lint. Since handlebar templates are a different language than JavaScript, and by nature are different, they have different set of linting rules. And as a side note, while we're here on this slide, one of my favorites is that they can enforce accessibility related rules. How cool is that? Like embedded accessibility, not 100%, but you will get the tooling for free, which is cool. And the thing is, there are tons of rules you could or should apply so that your templates in your project and across all your projects will stay consistent. We'll see the across all your projects again later on. The list you can see here are rules that you will get for free when you install ember-template-lint. So again, the community gives you a lot of tooling for free. But now, what if the tools fight each other? We were talking about that, like they can be in contradiction. What if, say, editorconfig has different settings than, say, ESLint? Well, I said that editorconfig is a formatter for your inputs. So anything past that has to have precedence. So the winner here would be ESLint. What about ESLint versus Prettier? Well, luckily there are smarter people than me, and they created a rule set that will turn off all ESLint rules that would conflict with Prettier. Install it and conflict is solved. Next, let's talk about blueprints for a bit. The neat thing about Ember, or ember-cll, to be more specific, is that it has generator functions. Those generators use blueprints to generate your components, services, roads, etc. So that you can just type this into your console and get your component bootstrapped in accordance with the latest community standards, which is really cool. And a lot of tooling from a lot of other environments actually stole this idea. Great. Also ember-cll projects have editor config, ESLint config, Prettier config, as we talked about this, right? And you as a user can change settings of those tools. So therefore, it's possible that ember-cll generators will create files that will violate one of the rules in your project. That's not great. But luckily, there's a fix for that, like literally a fix. And in fact, I had to ask the ember-cll to not do the fix for me during the generate command, because it turns out that just running lint fixes as part of your generate command is a pretty neat idea. I mean, who cares if blueprint conforms to any formatting standard whatsoever? We can just fix it after it has been generated. We have the machines to do that for us. One of the cool things, I think, on Ember is that it enforces folder structure, sort of. In effect, no matter what add-on, community project, or team project you open, it will look pretty similar. So that you can go directly to, say, app.router.js, and you know that you will find information about all the routes in the application inside that file. So let's have an example here. Great. There you will find that we have a route that's called posts. And because you know the convention in Ember project, you will know that you have to go to app templates post HBS, and you will see a template for that route. And in here, you can see that it uses a component that's called posts preview. So let's go there because we know that that component will lie in app components, posts preview, HPS, etc., etc. All thanks to consistency. But because of current, quite overhyped state of the world, we at CrowdStrike hire a lot of folks without prior experience with EmberJS. And that's okay, because Ember ecosystem is very consistent. So that after reading the official guides and manuals on EmberJS, new hire is pretty well equipped to dive into our own code. At the same time, thanks to our internal consistency at CrowdStrike, people can easily move between projects or contribute to other projects' code bases, which is really cool and helps the organization. Also, from this slide, you can see how tricky is it to correctly interpret data. Did you notice that while the trend line on EmberJS goes down, the actual value is consistent, and in fact, it went up in 2019. So careful with the data interpretation. ember-cll update. When I was thinking how to easily describe ember-cll update, I could think of only one thing to compare it to. So here goes. ember-cll update is like Rails migrations, but for your code. And I think it's pretty fitting. There are two main use cases. One is to bump the ember-cll dependencies so that they match particular version. So again, robots working for you. Second is to run so-called code mods that will take your code, munch it, and spit back the new and shiny version of it. I think this is extremely helpful because it eases the burden of the dreaded application update, so that we as Ember community got free update of our code for angle bracket components, native getters, etc. And partially this was possible thanks again to the consistency in the EmberJS ecosystem. And I think this is a good thing. Many people think so. So much so that my coworker at CrowdStrike, kellyselden, created a proof of concept for the same for Create React App. You can get the repo from the QR code and try and use it. And he presented it at the React London conference. I mean, imagine if, for example, going from class-based components to hooks would not mean throwing the old app through the window, but you could just let the machines do the work, or whatever the next hype will be. Next, commit-lint and friends. We at CrowdStrike enforce conventional commits format to enforce consistency in the commit messages. It looks something like this. You add type of work, which then maps to semantic versions, you know, like major, minor, patch. You add reference to respective ticket and some short description. And then the machines go and do various things based on the information provided. For example, for us, they automatically build a changelog, then they bump the package version of internal dependencies, and all that thanks to the consistent format of our commits. And then thanks to consistent naming in our Git branches, the robots can change the status of respective ticket, based on the status of the PR. And you know what's cool? I know that there's few coworkers in the audience, and I'm laughing my head off if they are actually trying to look up for this commit. One of the great things about being consistent is that it pretty much removes any space for nitpick comments. You want something formatted in a different way? Fine. Start an RFC, write a linter rule, and then we can talk. Otherwise, get out of my pull request. So to wrap it up, I'd like to say that thanks to consistency, we at CrowdStrike have seen some great wins, removing a lot of the bike shedding from our process and getting a lot of the robots to do the work for us. And obviously this has been possible thanks to the amazing work of the Ember community and their push to make things consistent where it makes sense. Because without consistency, people will get confused, more mistakes will be made, and ultimately your organization will lose a lot of money on things that does not really matter. Thank you for your time. Any questions?